little fox.
The Nutcracker, Part 1. It was Christmas Eve. Fritz, Marie, and their godfather were sitting next to the Christmas tree.
Godfather, what's that present?
Asked Fritz curiously. Fritz pointed to a very big red and green box. Open it and see, replied their godfather. Fritz and Marie opened their gift. It was an old wooden nutcracker shaped like a man.
He's kind of ugly,
said Fritz, disappointed. The nutcracker's legs were too short, and his head was too big. This nutcracker wasn't always ugly, said Godfather.
I like this funny-looking nutcracker,
said Marie.
What happened to him?
Once upon a time, Godfather began, there was a king and a queen who lived in a palace. The queen was in the kitchen when suddenly a very large mouse burst in. It was not any ordinary mouse, but the queen of the mice. The mouse queen squeaked, Queen, may I have some bacon? The kind queen replied, Of course. But the mouse queen was cunning. She quickly called all her family and friends. Hundreds of mice filled the kitchen. The mice ate everything in sight. The queen tried to chase them away, but there were too many. She ran out screaming. Later, the king ordered mousetraps to be set all around the palace. All of the mice, except for the mouse queen, died in the mouse traps. The mouse queen was furious at the king and the queen. All the mice were dead. That night, when the king and queen were eating, the mouse queen jumped onto the table. She shrieked at them, When you have a baby, I will take my revenge. Later, when Princess Pirlipat was born, everyone was overjoyed. Everyone except the queen. She was afraid of the mouse queen's revenge. For 10 years, 8 nurses and 8 cats guarded the princess day and night. Meanwhile, the mouse queen had a son of her own, but she never forgot her plan of revenge. One night, when the nurses and cats were sleeping, the mouse queen snuck into the nursery. She whispered a magic spell, and the beautiful princess became ugly. The princess's head became larger than her body, and her mouth grew until it was the largest part of her face. The king and queen were very upset, so the king asked his wise men for help. They agreed there was only one solution. The king must find a nut made out of solid gold. The wise men also told the king to find a handsome nutcracker man. The nutcracker must open the golden nut and give it to the princess. Then he must take 7 steps backward. When he does, the mouse queen's spell will be broken. The king's men searched everywhere, and eventually they returned with a golden nut and a nutcracker man. The king looked at the nutcracker and said, Nutcracker, if you break the magic spell, I will give you my kingdom. If Princess Pirlipat wishes, she may marry you. The nutcracker man did not answer. He only stared ahead. The king's men carried the nutcracker and the golden nut into the princess's room. Many people watched as the nutcracker cracked the nut. He gave it to the princess, closed his eyes, and started to walk 7 steps backward. Suddenly, there was a loud gasp, but the nutcracker kept his eyes closed. The mouse queen had appeared. Her eyes glittered with anger as she glared at the nutcracker. The nutcracker was just about to take his 7th step when the mouse queen stuck out her bony leg and tripped him. The nutcracker stumbled and fell, but as he fell, his sword cut the mouse queen's neck. She shrieked in pain and cried out, This spell has changed because the nutcracker man has fallen. The princess will become beautiful, but the nutcracker will be ugly instead. The Nutcracker, Part 2. Fritz and Marie looked at the nutcracker in amazement. They listened eagerly as their godfather continued the tale. Inside the princess's nursery were the king, queen, the Nutcracker, and a small crowd of people. And, of course, there was the Mouse Queen, who had just tripped the Nutcracker. The princess was beautiful again, but the once handsome Nutcracker was now ugly. The Mouse Queen lay on the nursery floor. As she slowly died, she muttered, "I will have my revenge. Even though I may die, my son will never forget." But everyone ignored her and rejoiced that the princess was beautiful again. Many years passed. The Nutcracker lived in the palace and was a good and kind young man. Before long, it was time for the princess to get married. The king reminded her that she must marry the Nutcracker, but she refused. "He is too ugly," she protested. The king and queen could not change the princess's mind, so they asked the Nutcracker to leave the palace. Reluctantly, he agreed and left.
Where is the Nutcracker man now?
Marie asked. "He's right here," said Godfather. The children gasped and inspected the Nutcracker more closely.
I don't think he's ugly. He just looks different. There's nothing wrong with that,
said Marie.
I think the princess worried too much about looks. She should remember that people can be beautiful on the inside.
You're a good girl, Marie, said her godfather.
What happened to the mice?
Asked Fritz.
The Mouse Queen said her son would take his revenge.
Oh, he did, said their godfather. But that's a story for another night. It's late, and you must go to bed now. Tomorrow's a big day. It's Christmas.
I'm not tired,
said Fritz.
And I can't sleep until I know the story's ending.
I'll tell you this, said their godfather in a whisper. The Mouse King and the Nutcracker fought in front of the Christmas tree, and the Nutcracker won. Now go to bed, my dears. Marie was tired, but she was glad the Nutcracker had defeated the Mouse King. She slept and dreamed of kings and queens and princesses and mice. In the middle of the night, Marie woke suddenly because she heard voices in the living room. Marie quickly got out of bed. The living room was dark except for the dim glow coming from the fireplace, but it was enough to see something moving near the Christmas tree. There was a strange shadow on the wall. Marie was scared. Then Marie saw him. It was the Mouse King, son of the Mouse Queen. His eyes glowed red, his face was like a rat's, and he wore a crown of rubies. The Mouse King looked across the room and he called out, I have to avenge my mother's death. Are you ready? The Nutcracker advanced without speaking. He seemed to be smiling. The Mouse King swiftly drew his sword and charged the Nutcracker. Marie screamed, but the Nutcracker also drew his sword and easily dodged the Mouse King's first attack. The Mouse King and the Nutcracker battled back and forth across the living room floor. Their tiny swords clashed in the dim light. Marie had one hand over her mouth and one hand over her eyes, but she could see everything between her fingers. Both the Nutcracker and the Mouse King fought hard and long. Marie knew someone would make a deadly mistake soon. She saw the Nutcracker fall and gasped. She had to act. Marie pulled off her shoe and hurled it straight at the Mouse King. Her shoe hit him in the head. Poof! Like magic, the Mouse King was gone, but the Nutcracker was gone too.
The battle is over,
said a handsome prince standing next to her.
Yes,
said Marie.
But where is the Nutcracker?
I am here,
said the handsome man.
I am the Nutcracker.
But my Nutcracker was ugly. You are so handsome,
exclaimed Marie.
The Mouse Queen's spell is finally broken,
said the Nutcracker. The Nutcracker prince looked at Marie with his kind eyes and gentle smile. Marie's eyes twinkled as she said,
Merry Christmas, Nutcracker. Marie, get up!
called Fritz. He came into the living room.
Why are you sleeping here?
Marie slowly sat up.
Where's the handsome prince?
She asked. Then she realized it was all a dream. She smiled. Godfather had given her two gifts this Christmas, a nutcracker and his story.